my job as a parent is not dependent on how my child behaves, but how I behave. It's the only thing I can control in that moment. And it takes it out of like taking it so personally. Like I work with a lot of dads. I'm like, dude, you're a grown man.
Hey there, and welcome to the Parenting Reframe. I'm Albiona Rakipi, mom, parenting coach, life coach, and someone who has spent over 20 years helping families navigate the wild, wonderful world of raising kids. But here's the thing. This podcast goes deeper. It's not just about parenting tips, it's about personal transformation, because parenting our kids also means learning how to parent ourselves. From fear to creativity, from disconnection to deep connection, this is where growth gets real. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in. Welcome back, you guys. You're in for a treat this week. I got to sit down and talk with Kirk Martin. If you don't know who he is the founder of Celebrate Calm and the Calm Parenting Podcast. He has close to 1 million followers on Instagram, and I can understand why. He really specializes in working with strong-willed kids and neurodivergent children. He has helped parents globally and teachers as well. He is an incredible resource. If you are in the throes of trying to parent a strong-willed child, you're going to want to listen to this episode. Kirk has firsthand experience. He parented a strong-willed child himself, and that child is now 32, his son Casey. We talk a lot about this on the episode and all the ways that Kirk had to really undo the way that he was parented. He was raised in a military household, so you can only imagine the strictness that comes with that, and how he had to take those parenting experiences and really weave them into a whole new paradigm when he met Casey. And so you will really resonate with this episode. If you've ever found yourself even in complete disagreement sometimes with your partner, or you're just not sure how to parent a strong-willed child, and each of you has very different parenting strategies, you'll want to tune in because we cover all of this in this week's episode. And you guys will walk away with so many tools, so many strategies, and so many ways to navigate this wild world. Without further ado, here is Kirk Martin. Hi, Kirk. I'm so happy to have you here. I have been following your work for quite some time. I think you've been in the parenting space and helping educators as well. And you were certainly an inspiration to me before I ever went on social media and posted my own videos. A lot of what you said resonated with me and the families I was supporting, both when I used to be a teacher and in a therapeutic setting. So welcome. I'm so happy to have you here.
I am so excited because you offer something like very complementary to what we do. So I'm excited for like our people to learn about you and your work. So thank you for this.
Thank you. Likewise. Yeah, that's such a compliment coming from you. And it's funny, every one of your videos that I watch, I'm like, oh, that is so good. And I'm somebody who is in this space, right? And so you would think to some extent, I always tell parents that, like when I shed light on something for you, I always tell them, I don't think I'm actually doing anything other than uncovering what you already knew. There's just this sense that I think what I just did was I just helped you go, oh my gosh, I knew that. Or that feels obvious and you just helped me get there. So when I watch your videos and they're so wise and insightful and smart, and I think to myself the same thing, like, and we're going to jump into this, but like defiance obviously comes to mind because it's one of the things that you and I both talk about quite a bit. And it's so easy to stay stuck on that surface piece of it, the behavior, the action, the words, the disrespect, right? And so when we stay there, it just feels like you're on this hamster wheel that nobody can get off of. So I would love to just start there, but also if you could share a little of your personal story as a father. I think it helps so many of us resonate with your words because you've sort of walked the walk to that extent.
So I was born to a career military father, had 3 brothers, and all my dad knew was that like fear and intimidation, my way or the highway approach. And so when we had our first son, was our very strong-willed son that kind of came out of the womb with boxing gloves on, I was like, I'll just do what my dad did. That worked. And it backfired. And with working with strong-willed kids, I mean, you can go like, I'm going to double down, and they'll like quadruple down in their resistance to you. And so I spent the first few years just trying to change his behavior because it's a trap we fall into, right? Like, well, we just need to do this. We need to set more firm boundaries. And none of it worked until I finally changed myself, learned how to control my own emotions. And I'm going to ask you questions today because the tone of voice thing is one of the first things that I changed. And that had such an impact on our son, Casey. So that was the genesis of me realizing I'm the one who needs to change. It's not about changing Casey. And I always tell parents it's very liberating because it's not a blame and guilt like, you're the problem. You need to change as a parent. It's like, no, this is an opportunity, one, to grow up and mature. And your kids, your strong willed kids are like the best therapists ever because they point out they push all of your buttons, the ones you don't even know you had. And they're like, my son is just a mirror for me, for my own immaturity. And so it's really liberating to know I don't have to control my wife's moods. I don't have to control my son's behavior. I really just need to control my own. And when I do that, it's like everything begins to fall in place.
I love that so much. And I agree with everything you just said. And it's funny because so much of when I started to work one-on-one with parents and not the children, right? Because I had worked with kids for 23 years and then I shifted and I moved into a parenting model where I was there to really support them because I still have parents say to me, will you work with my child? And I am confident that I can work and connect with almost any child. It's that I want to teach you how to do it, right? I want to show you where you just might have blind spots because you're just so in it. And to your point, it always starts with us. And I realized that myself as a parent. My children are now older, but when they were younger, I started to see a lot of reactivity. And it was really rooted in this idea of like, as they got older, I had to sort of surrender to the fact that I can't control them. I can't control everything they do. And that's induced such fear in me that fear then caused me to become very reactive to any little thing. Like I became the no parent. And I remember my husband saying to me one time, because my son he was in middle school and he was like walking up the stairs and he kind of mumbled under his breath, like, why do you always say no, And I was like ready to double down and be like, you don't ask me why I say, and my husband looked at me and he goes, why do we always say no? And, we were both raised very similarly, right? And we had immigrant parents and wonderful parents, but they came here very afraid of the unknown. And so the result of that, and I think a lot of children of immigrants can relate to this, is that you felt very sheltered and you felt very scared to sort of try anything or get in trouble, or you didn't really break rules. You were really just too scared to do so. And so we really did the same thing. And then my husband kind of said to me one day, like, why are we saying no all the time? He is right. Like we don't even have good reasons. And so I had to really look at myself, right? And I had to go like, oh my gosh, this is a me thing. This is, like you said, this is a mirror. This is the universe saying to me, or God, like, look at where you need to continue to grow. Look at what you have to continue to heal. And through that, I developed a 4-step process called PAR, which stands for pause, acknowledge, respond, reflect, because I wanted to sort of look at what these trigger points were within myself. And I wanted to sit with where they came from. I wanted to sort of excavate a little bit more instead of projecting and thinking, well, if you just listened, if you just, and we're always looking at these external reasons as to why we react. But I wanted to get control of it. I wanted to understand myself better. And through doing those 4 steps repeatedly, really, it helped me manage my reactions and understand my reactions. And then the minute I started to feel escalated, let's say, or upset by something that happened, that self-awareness was so strong that I was like, oh, just pause. This is not about the talking back. This is not about the eye roll that you just saw. This isn't about the rude behavior, right? And so I started to do that. And then what happens naturally, and this is what I encourage so many parents to think about, is when you build some form of a pause in there and you can just stop and look at yourself, the rest unfolds pretty organically and naturally. I mean, we always want solutions and those are important and we want tools. But if we're not going to do the work first with ourselves, I can give you all the scripts in the world, which is a little bit of the post you were talking about earlier. We were talking about empathy. But if I can give you a lot of scripts, but they're not going to help if you're at a level 10 every time your child talks back. So I love that you're highlighting that point because I think it's so missed. And I think we assume like can you fix him or her? And so that way I can be calm again. Right?
What I learned early on, I remember there's this one time where Casey had been talking back to my wife and I came in the room and was like, how many times have I told you, you can't talk to your mom like that? Go to your room. And I remember being on the steps of this house that we were living in and realizing I need my son to behave so that I can behave. And what I was essentially
Mm,
saying is, if you don't control your mouth right now, I'm not sure I can control mine. You don't want to see me angry. And so this is related to what you just said. I started doing I like simple things because I work with a lot of guys and we're pretty simple, right? We're not going to remember, like, here's the 10-step
yeah.
calming process. So I was like, I would sit down. And so I learned when I sit down, it's really hard to yell when you're sitting down. You automatically breathe in. So there's that pause you're talking about. And it's a physical action step I can take. So even quickly, like two siblings are fighting in the living room. Usually we come in, you know what? I buy you guys all these toys and video games. You can't even play well together. Excuse me, for 20 minutes, go to your rooms.
Hmm.
And I didn't teach them anything. I just sent them away from me. But if I walk in and sit down, or better yet, like lie down in the middle of the living room floor, it freaks kids out. And they're going to be like, what are you doing laying down? And it's really interesting because now I just took back control of that situation and I didn't control them. I just controlled my body posture and it changes something. So I always start there of like, all you want me to do is sit. And I was like, yes, I promise if you sit in the midst of your trigger, like a messy room, and then like you said, I just sit in it until it doesn't trigger me viscerally. It's still going to irritate me.
Mm.
But then you start to think all your things of like, oh, is it guilt? I must be such a bad mom or dad because when I grew up, the house was always clean and we didn't do that. My child's talking back to me. I would have never done that to my, am I being a bad parent? What would my parents say? And you know, that parental anxiety to me, that's what you talked about, that fear and anxiety, that's what drives the constant lectures, the constant focus on the negativity.
Mm.
So when I just sit for a second, it doesn't fix everything, but it's a really good starting point.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, you know, until we can get to that just sitting piece, right? If we're just at a level 10 and in this fight or flight sort of response pattern all the time, you're just going to see a lot of the same thing. So I appreciate so much even what you're saying, just that physical, concrete direction of just sit down. I've done the same thing, like go pace, just, you know, but again, I like the idea of sitting because like you said, it's naturally rooting you. You're not going to start screaming. It's going to just disrupt whatever automatic pattern you've probably adopted at that point. And to your point, it's so true when we're saying things to ourselves like, I would have really gotten in trouble there if I did that. I would have never spoken to
Mhm.
my parents that way. And so it almost feels like an assault on our parenting style and the way that we're showing up for them. And the way I explain it to parents is that if we are placing our value and worth as a parent on how our kids present to the world, the codependency in there and the unfairness of it is immeasurable, right? Because now I'm burdening my kids with exactly what you described with your son. Like when you behave well, I can behave well. We're like, let's completely flip that around so that like I can always manage what's coming up for me. And I'm here to support you through whatever might be upsetting you or whatever skill you need to develop. Whatever the thing is, it's that it starts with some sense of let me root into where I need to be so that my child can work through the thing they need to work through rather than assigning sort of a, oh, my child's being cooperative, I'm a good parent. Oh, my child's not being cooperative, I'm clearly the bad parent. So I think when we start to assign these attributes of good and bad based on how our kids behave, I think you just miss the mark and you miss those moments where you are invited, like you said, to look in that mirror and look at yourself in these moments of struggle where it just feels so challenging.
That's so good. I like to say, like, my job as a parent is not dependent on how my child behaves, but how I behave. It's the only thing I can control in that moment. And it takes it out of like taking it so personally. Like I work with a lot of dads. I'm like, dude, you're a grown man. Like, what are you expecting? It's a 4-year-old, or like you think you're the only one, you have the only teen or tween in the world that doesn't have attitude. You were a dopey
Mhm.
14-year-old once. And so it just helps to let go. It helps kind of a little bit letting go of the ego part and letting go and saying, so one of my favorite things was when I would hear Casey talking with attitude, I'd say, okay, that's an alarm bell. something's going on with him. And so my job is either I'm going to react, you know, you can't talk to me like that. What were you thinking? Which every single time I did that, every single time it escalated. And now we have a 2-hour fight about what he can and cannot say to his father. And then I transitioned to, okay, my son needs something here. Doesn't mean I have to let him get away with it. But our famous example, when we used to travel, people used to bring us chips and salsa. Because the famous example was, I was like, Case, the last 43 times, joking, but not really, I've heard that tone in your voice. Because, you know, with a strong-willed child, it's like, oh, why are they doing it 43 times? It's like, if you have a strong-willed child, they're like relentless. So I was like, hey, the last how many ever times I heard you do that, what it's told me is you're anxious, you're frustrated, or you're hungry. And so what I was doing was identifying, hey, here are your triggers. And because of those triggers, now you're talking to me that way. So 2 options. You can talk to me like that if you want. It's just not going to end well. It's not going to work. And I like that tone of voice is very even, matter of fact. Hey, you can do that. It's not gonna work. But if you want to grab some chips, I'll grab some salsa, because he was always hungry. I'll meet you on the deck. I'll help you with whatever you're struggling with. So now there's an invitation. Hey, something's going on with you. I'm old enough and wise enough to know something else is happening at school with one of your friends, maybe your girlfriend. Hey, why don't we move? So we use that motion changes emotion. So instead of standing face to face with your child, like our son, like you said, you're going to see the eye rolls, the little smirk, and you're going to want to be like, why'd you do? So then it was like, hey, I'm going to go grab the chips. You grab the salsa. I'll meet you somewhere else. And it gave us a minute and a half, that space you talked about. We meet in a different place. And now my feet are up, having a snack. It's really hard to yell when you're eating chips and salsa, right? Like everybody's happy. Throwing a couple margaritas, everybody's happy. But you know what I mean? But that's a nice one. Coloring. Coloring's a fantastic tool. And parents always think it's for little kids. But if you're a mom with a teenage daughter, because that is so fraught with, like, your daughter's got eye roll going in the little snotty attitude.
Yeah.
And you want to go back with your snotty attitude. And instead you throw it off by, you just sit down and you just start coloring. There's no eye contact. And your teenage daughter looks at you like, what are you doing? I'll be like, well, I just thought I would color, because usually if I don't, I yell at you and then we fight for like 4.5 hours. So I just thought I colored. You want to color with me? Okay, this is stupid.
Yeah.
You don't react. 2 minutes later, you're both coloring, not even looking at each other. And then the conversation happens and she's like, Mom, I'm just so frustrated. And now you just became the parent your child can trust, right? And now it's chips and salsa, it's coloring, it's crayons, and it's kind of cool that way.
Amazing. Yeah, I love that. It's almost par in motion, right? You're pausing through moving. You're acknowledging that if I don't do this pause, I'm going to probably yell, and this is going to result in a screaming match that won't really make you or I feel any better. And there's really we're not solving anything. And then you move into your response, which is, once everybody's settled and calm, I don't know, let's talk about what's happening, what's going on there, but in such an informal way. I just actually recorded a video. I haven't posted it yet, but I'm talking about, a lot of times parents, they love lecturing, and we can unpack this a little bit of, like, it's just so ineffective with strong-willed kids. And we love teaching. And I've had Joe Newman on the podcast as well. He wrote a book called Raising Lions. He's just phenomenal and really gifted in terms of, like, understanding how to connect with kids who really, like you and I are talking about, who are just relentless. They will just stick to it. And I actually find their defiance quite like a breath of fresh air. I think it's healthy, right? We want people to express this in a way that feels fair and productive, just not harmful. And I think it's our job to help our kids find this balance. But anyways, we were talking about this idea that you don't have to teach your kids everything, and that kids are inherently always learning, and kids are experiential learners. They learn through experiences. So it's on us to let them have certain experiences. Like you're saying, we're not letting them get away with things. The consequence is the consequence. The boundary is the boundary. Them being upset about it, they can be upset about it, right? Like, we can't tell. If I came and said to you, hey, I'm going to take away your favorite thing, you just can't do it for the next few days, you would have your feelings about it, even if you could make sense of it, right? So I think that what you're describing is so important because we're not approaching it through the lens of a lecture or a teaching moment. And so that's what my video is about too, of like when we go to our kids afterwards and we say something like, let's talk, and I'd love your opinion on this. But most of the kids that I've worked with or the families that I've worked with, that child, it starts all over. And the reason being is I tell parents a lot of times, if someone says to you, let's say your coworker emails you the night before and says, hey, tomorrow morning when you come in, come by my office, we need to talk.
Oh, I won't sleep.
Or if your partner if your partner shoots you a text and says, hey, later on today after dinner, let's set some time aside, we got to talk. You're naturally in such a like state of panic if you're like me and you're reflecting on everything you did in the last 48 hours.
What did I do? Why is she mad?
Yep. What are they going to talk to me about? What did I say? So for a child, through the lens of a child, all that's happening is they already have some vulnerability and shame around what that event just was and how that unfolded. And we are just putting that spotlight right back on there. So I'm not saying not to talk, but let's be strategic about how we do it. So instead of going in with a, hey, stop what you're doing, let's look at each other and let's talk, which is just going to induce that same defensive energy, let's instead say to them, hey, you want to know what? Let's go for a bike ride. Let's go color. Let's go do this craft together. Let's go build that Lego tower that you were talking about. And while working, and I've done this with several kids in a therapeutic setting, let's start to seed some solutions. Let's start to connect. Let's say, you know what, buddy, one time I got in so much trouble with grandpa because I talked back when I was about your age and I just couldn't help it. He said something and I got super upset and then I said something and then I don't even know. But man, I know that feeling. I know what it feels like when somebody makes you feel like you're in a corner and you have to yell back.
See, I love that. Yeah, so I do same thing, no eye contact. That's why I like building with Legos on the floor, walking. When Casey, our son, was older, we go for drives because you're next to each other in the dark. As teenagers, really like after dark, they're not being watched. Nobody wants to be watched while they're in a state of shame, while they feel bad about things. And then, like you said, I plant little seeds. And now I was going to ask you about this, but let me do this first and then I'll ask you. I tend to do more matter-of-fact talk because once I dip into this talk, it sounds to the strong-willed child a little condescending, right? Of like, well, let me teach this to you. Even your 3-year-old's like, no, just give it to me straight, Dad. Right? Like, Mom, stop talking to me like I'm a baby. Mm-hmm. And then I would plant a seed. Like when Casey was a teenager, I'd say, hey, next time that happens, let me give you a couple options. And then you think about what you want to do. And then oftentimes if we were at home, I would walk out of the room. I just plant the seeds and say, hey, one of my favorite phrases was, hey, Casey, a couple things I've discovered in life usually works better when people handle situations this way. And then I would change the subject and I gave him time to process. He knew that I had just given him some wisdom, but he respected it because I didn't go on. So remember, next time we're in one of those situations, I really want you to think about, I can tell you that is infuriating to strong-willed kids. It's like, I got it. And you're like, no, why won't you listen to me? And my honest answer, I hope it doesn't offend anyone, is just shut up. Our most popular podcast ever, I did 2. Albione, this was funny. It's called Back Off and Shut Up. And I thought it was going to offend people. We've had more listens. It's a 2-parter because it's so hard because you love your kids so much. And it's like, please, I just want you to understand that it would, and that actually makes it worse. Can I give you one more for older kids? So Casey would come and share something, and instead of responding with, oh, now I get to give lecture 42B on how to make good friendship choices, because we have all this we want to share. I'd say, you know what? I appreciate you sharing that with me. I've got to go do something in a garage, get started on dinner. If you want to come grab me later, I'd love to share my thoughts with you. And then I'd walk away. And then it was up to him. He had the agency, ownership to come in. Just know moms and dads are going to come in. Okay, Dad, what are your stupid ideas? And then you can't take it personally. And it's like my child just came in and opened up to me. But yeah, I love that we're aligned on that approach of like no eye contact, short and sweet, plant the seeds, do it while you're doing something else. So it's not like we need to have a family meeting. So your mother and father are both disappointed in you, and we're both going to be staring at you. And you're not actually going to have an answer because we're going to ask, why did you do that? And then the child's going to be like, I don't know. Well, you need to think about your actions. Why don't you go think in your room? It's just not helpful.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. It's so funny. I thought of two things as you were talking. One is I agree with you on the just don't talk. And I've had so many families ask me, would you be willing? We can like bring you to our home and just watch us and help us in real time. Right. And I understand the need and the ask. Right. And I always say to them, I promise you, without even knowing much about you, sometimes this is on our first call, I say to them, I already know what I'm probably going to tell you. 9 out of 10 times, I'm just going to be in your ear saying, stop talking. Stop talking, walk away, stop talking, right? Because we love talking and teaching. And I think that comes from you described your own sort of father and this sort of more of this military style of parenting. And I think what happened with modern parents is like that pendulum swung so far the other way. And we said, we are going to talk to our kids. We're going to teach our kids everything. We're never going to just punish them or do the things that we felt were unfair to us. And that happens. I mean, I would imagine every generation experiences that. And so I always say there's a middle, right? Like we don't want to throw everything out. Like there's a lot of great things our parents did, even if we don't agree with every single thing. I've told my own kids who are now older that if you decide that one day you want to become a parent and that's the route you guys go, I hope you do it so differently for me and your dad, because we should know more, right? Like we should continue to be learning and growing and knowing more. And so if that's the case, hopefully we've seeded a good foundation for you and you can take that and jump into the next chapter. So I love that you were, talking on the like, just stop talking, because I say it all the time. I'm sure my one-on-one clients listening to this right now are very much appreciative of like hearing it again. But the other thing is, I always say too, don't ask why when you know the answer. It's a question with very little gain for anybody. Like if a child, let's look at a younger child. Let's say they go over, their brother has the toy that they want. They don't want to wait. You've told them to wait. They push their brother down and grab the toy. And their brother's crying. And now we say over and over, why did you do that? Why did you do that? Look, your brother's crying. He's hurt. You hurt him. Why did you do that? You knew you were supposed to wait. You're not really asking why, right? Because you know why. We can all tell you why. They're simple. Because he had his toy. It's just that, and that's not the challenge. It's not the lack of information that caused him to hit his brother. So I think when you look at teens and we go, ask why over and over, I've even told some parents, I bet you they don't even know why. You're asking an impossible question, And so we could spend a lot of time on the why, or we could just connect. And for me, I would much rather figure out how do we connect so we can strengthen that bond and we can start to build more trust and really in them more self-trust for themselves and start to put plans together from there.
Can I share something related to that?
Sure.
So I love that. And what I like to do is almost normalize it. So for little kids, like, well, of course you stole your brother's toy, because you had something really cool and you wanted it.
Yeah.
So I'm taking all the drama and the heaviness of like, I can't believe that you would do that. I was like, of course you would do that. But now you see the outcome's not good. So why don't we play rewind and replay? I'll show you a different way to get the toy that doesn't involve you hitting your brother, right? And a teenager who's starting to get into things, I can't believe that you would do that. It's like, why couldn't you believe that? Like, of course. You're a teenage boy with hormones raging. You don't have a prefrontal cortex that's developed. You're going to do idiotic things, right? And then that's not like an excuse, right? Like the kid's not going to be like, oh, so it's okay to keep doing that. No, I'm just saying it's normal. So let me show you next time, Casey, you're in that situation. Here's probably what's going on inside. So here's a different way you could handle it. And what I'm really curious to ask you is this because you're a speech pathologist and therapist and you know these things. You mentioned that swing from like our parents who are more authoritarian, kind of like, you better stop that. My dad was like, shut you down. And I hope no one's offended and I hope you're not offended. Where I think we've swung too far is that really, really sweet tone that we use sometimes. And I think with strong-willed kids, it makes them feel, it sounds condescending to them. And so I was going to ask you your opinion on this. So let me give you a quick scenario. So a kid comes home from school, wants to build a paper airplane. Little boy makes his paper airplane, flies it. It doesn't fly well. Your kind of neurotypical whatever kids, they'll just get up and make a different one. Your strong-willed kids are going to be like, stupid airplane, I hate it, right? And they start crumpling it up. And most parents come in and say, oh, honey, that was a really good airplane. And then the child's like, duh, if it were a good airplane, it would have flown the right way. You're stupid, right? Now the parent gets offended. I like sometimes in those situations using some intensity, saying, of course you're frustrated. You were picturing that airplane all day long at school. You come home, you fly it, doesn't fly well. That's frustrating. I think with intense kids, the intense validation makes it, oh, so you get it? Yeah, I get it. You got a picture in your brain of how you're doing something? Yeah, that's frustrating. I've found that that's actually much more calming than saying, oh, buddy, that's an okay airplane. We'll do a different one. And I'm curious of your thoughts. What is it in that tone of voice that changes something? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it totally does. And I think there's a lot of merit to that. And I think a lot of, I would say not even just strong-willed kids, but a lot of kids respond best to clear, concise language, meaning the more we can just state something without, I don't want to say the fluff, because certainly we want to be loving and there are ways and times where we can do that. But in moments of, like you're describing, frustration or whatever the case might be, when we go in with a soft tone, the best way I can explain it is this. Strong-willed kids, for me, this is my opinion, and I've spoken to others about this too, is that they don't value approval, they value power. And there is nothing wrong with that. I think we hear that sometimes and we think, great, I have some power-hungry kid, because we look at people in power and maybe we assume they misuse it, right? Like there is a lot connected to that word for people for different reasons. So when we see that, we think, like you described, I'm going to double down. You're not going to have more power than me. Like that triggers something in us. But instead, when you know that, like what Joe Newman has even mentioned before, is like hand-to-hand parenting, where it's like when they're pushing with all their power, you better have your hand right up there pushing right back, because they want to see how much power do you have relative to me. So now if we take that idea of what you're describing, the tone, and now they're in this complete kind of chaotic moment and they're frustrated and they can't get out of that loop that they're in. And we go in and we're really soft and we're just, oh, honey. And we kind of use this different tone where we're almost, like you said, can almost feel patronizing, because to the child in that moment, it's like, do you not see this level 10 problem that I'm in?
Right.
It's not really a level 10 problem, but for them, it is a level 10 problem. And now you're coming at me with this like almost soft, cutesy tootsy voice of like, oh, it's okay. And, you know, where I don't feel anything that you're saying right now. So what happens when we say, wow, oof, how annoying. That is so frustrating. You want that plane to fly and it didn't. What we're starting to do is we give voice, reason, and words to that emotion that they're experiencing, but we're doing it in a way that's reasonable, that's fair. We're not flying off the handle, right? Because those are what parents, I think, see as their only two options. I'm going to be really gentle, calm, and nice, or I'm going to complete other side and I'm going to go in there and say, cut it out. It's just an airplane. Go pick it up and stop acting like a baby. You can try it, right? Like we have like one or the other. And I always say like, there's a middle in between both of those spaces where it's just clear. We can narrate for them like, oof, that did not go right. All right. I wonder how we could fix it. I don't know. I always say strong-willed kids, when given the opportunity to teach or lead, give it to them.
They love their autonomy. I would say even more, maybe I'll have to think about that afterwards, and I'll email that power word, because I think it might be an autonomy thing, right? And that's kind of why consequences, they don't care about losing stuff. They don't want to lose their autonomy. And so it's, I want to build this airplane. It didn't fly right. I'm like, oh, dude, totally get why you'd be frustrated. And then I give space. And then I say like, I'm going to go get a drink. When I get back, hey, why don't we problem solve? And that space gives them time to cycle through their emotions without us standing over them. Because I always like to say, nobody likes to be watched while they're struggling. you know what, I'm just going to stand here until you figure this out.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, you're going to watch me cycle through my disappointment. And so I give them a little space. And when I get back, I do this in case dad's watching, like it's problem solving mode. It really helps sometimes. It sounds funny to not think of yourself as a parent. And it's like, okay, if I'm an ER doctor and they bring in a patient at midnight, I'm not like, what were you doing out that late? Now you're bleeding all over my emergency room, right? That's what a parent does. The ER doctor says, okay, let's take the vitals, see what we've got here. We're going to stabilize the patient. Now we problem solve and I lead my team. So for guys, a lot of times, it's like in the business world, we can handle anything. But then we come home and they're like Legos on the floor. We're like, there's stuff everywhere. I can't handle the disorder. And it's like 10 minutes ago, you were solving this big problem at work. So I'm like, just be the problem solver at home. And so your job isn't to like discipline your kids. It's like, why don't you help them? They're figuring out their way through life. I guess you look so young. I'm way older, but we have older kids. But the older I get, it's like, they're just figuring out how to do this, right? Like your teenager, it's the first time they've ever been 13, right? They're going to do stupid stuff.
Yeah.
Your toddler, every day when they wake up, everything's new. Their job is to make messes and ruin your parental agenda. Then if you can reframe it of like, okay, I wake up in the morning and instead of, hey, I really want my kids to behave this morning because I've got this busy agenda. It's like, hey, my kids are probably going to struggle with something today. I wonder how I can come alongside and help them navigate this. Then this sounds a little smarmy, but then the problems aren't so much like, oh my gosh, we're in crisis. It's like, no, I've got another opportunity to share my wisdom and to show them how to navigate this and to grow up myself, which is to me the bigger part.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so many good things to, unpack in there. But I agree with all of that. And it's funny, I was talking to a family I was working with, and I was explaining the importance of being what I call an energy shifter as a parent. I think it's really important that we see ourselves in that role because we have that ability to do that. And so I described myself, my kids were they were school aged, and at that time, our schedules were so hectic. I was coming home from I was in a new job and things were stressful, and I was having to pick them up and get them to soccer practice, which was like on the other side of town. And my thing was always like, let's just get our things in order before we have to leave. And of course, I would come home and the house was chaotic and there was like backpacks in the way. And it's like everything I said to do, they were like, we're not going to do any of it. So I remember we would have this same kind of episode every day. I would come home, I would raise my voice. They would listen because they were scared, right? Because now I turned mean. And then all of a sudden they would be doing the things I wanted them to do. I would be annoyed, right? I would be resentful. Why do I have to yell? You guys should have just done it. I always tell this every single day we go through this. Now we're driving to practice. Everybody's in a little bit of a bummed mood. And I didn't like it. Like it wasn't like my essence. It wasn't like, I love kids. I've always worked with kids. I didn't want to show up for my own kids in this way. And so the following day I come home, same thing, right? And I just paused in that moment, and it was such a important shift. And I said to myself, you know what? I'm not going to say a word, and I'm just going to clean up. I'm going to put the dishes in the dishwasher. I'm going to get their backpacks. I'm going to get their soccer thing. I'm just going to do it. And I'm not going to say anything. And I'm not saying this is right, but it's just in that moment, I was like, I'm just going to choose different today. I'm just going to do it. And I'm going to promise myself that we're going to have a really great time driving to practice. I'm not going to mention this. I'm just going to enjoy the evening with my kids. And we laughed and we told stories and we told jokes in the car, and everyone was great. And then later on that evening, we're all regulated at this point. I said, hey, you know what, you guys, today when I came home, I noticed like dishes weren't put away, whatever. I don't even want to spend time talking about that. Here's the thing though. It took me about 15 minutes to clean up after you guys. No biggie. And I don't want to come home and yell. It's not who I am. You guys don't deserve it. You guys know what to do. It's your choice. I can't control you. So from now on, when we have practice, when I come home, if I have to spend 15 minutes doing the things that you guys needed to do, no big deal. You're just going to lose 15 minutes somewhere of something you really love to do. Because for me, that 15 minutes, I could have grabbed a cup of tea. I could have done something to just reset myself for the afternoon. And again, no one's in trouble, but it's just a matter of how you decide you want to use your time. Or maybe I leave everything there. And when you guys come home, you can figure out how to put it all away before you do anything you want to do. And they never did it again.
Isn't that interesting?
And it wasn't because they were scared. It wasn't, I think it's because I truly let go. It was no longer this point of contention. It wasn't this ongoing argument. I wasn't reactive about it. I was actually like very zen. I was like, it's fine. And if I have to do it, I'll do it. Like this is a really small thing for us to waste our energy on. And they just started to do it after that. So I think it's those moments where we can shift the energy of the situation by changing something in the way we're showing up in those moments. And I wanted to ask you this as I was talking, I was thinking about it. What do you think for you was the shift that got you from like the double down dad, that you're going to listen to me, you're not going to speak to me? Was there a moment where you kind of, because for me, that was like one of my first moments where I felt like I had this out of body experience where it was almost like I could see like, okay, you can do this again. You can go in there and yell at them and they're going to bounce right up and they're going to say sorry and not mean it and right, look, the whole thing. Or you can choose different. And so I'm wondering for you, was there a moment where you can think back on and go like, that was the moment I said to myself, like, this just isn't working?
Yeah, I think it was, I know the house we were living in at the time because we moved a lot. And I remember because I was a good dad. Like I was very involved with Casey. It's just that every time we went somewhere, it would end in me being frustrated at him. And so I remember thinking like, I love my son. Why do I keep sabotaging it? And it's like he wouldn't come to me for help. And when I started just doing the sitting down, talking to him and problem solving with him, I noticed he was coming to me more. Hey, Dad. And he would ask me things. And like, he's 32 now. To this day, when my son and we hike together all the time, but when he comes and he's like, Dad, hey, can I talk to you about something? I know you experience this too, as a parent with older kids. It's like it means everything.
Everything.
My son is asking me for my wisdom. And so when he was a little boy and he came to do that, because I would look at him and it, with the strong-willed kids, it's like there's this sweetness underneath because they've got really big hearts. But man, there's an intensity to him. Like he's still like a really intense kid. But when he would come to me and say, Dad, and then I was like, oh, this is working. And it had nothing to do with him changing at all. Like it was very clear that the only thing that had changed was that I had changed. And then I can tell you as a guy, I don't have an addictive personality, but I do have the, hey, if something's working, oh, I'm going to keep doing that. And I was like, so if I keep changing myself, I can create an even closer relationship with my son. And that became addictive to me. And then it was like, okay, what's the next area of my immaturity that I need to work on? And so, yeah, that was it of like that. I think you talk about all, it's the connection part. When you get the connection, you don't even have to talk. And if you do talk, you can mention like our son and I, like we hike a lot. And last week we did this really hard hike. He spent an hour asking me about my childhood and such insightful questions of like, so Dad, do you still have resentment towards your dad? What about your brothers? And I was like, it's so interesting. Anyway, moms and dads, it is so worth it. I will guarantee you almost everything you're worried about right now, it doesn't matter. It doesn't, like, my toddler's not picking up their toys. They're going to grow up and be irresponsible. No, they're not. Some days you're just going to have to get down on your hands and knees and clean up the toys and sing and put a smile on your face and connect with them. And they're going to be great. Like, really focus on the connection part.
It's so true. And I think like you and I both, my daughter's 19 and my son's 22. And it's like, so obviously you're a parent always, but so much of it is in your rearview mirror at this point. And I think there is a lot of moments where even I'll be talking with a parent and I'll say like something as simple as like, I want them to make their beds. It's like,
don't let it go. Close the door.
Who cares, right? Yeah, just don't look at it, right? Like there's just better things to spend your time doing and building with your kid. And it's like a lot of things that we subscribe to around like what it means to be good and responsible and like whatever, your upbringing looked like. Usually those are some of the things we carry with us into that parenting space. but honestly, just let it go. It's like there's a lot that I can tell you now that maybe I was stuck in the weeds about a while ago. And I'm like, what a nonsensical fight to have. Or, it just really didn't matter. I would love to talk to you about, you did this post and I thought it was so important. And I loved that you as a father were the one talking about this. But you talked about this idea that your wife always felt like she sort of had, and I might be getting it wrong, but like essentially she was on eggshells around you because she was worried that you would be the one to get more escalated or maybe blow up. So she was sort of doing what so many of the mothers I know do, which is towing this line between trying to mitigate the child's behavior so that the dad does not, quote unquote, lose it. Can you talk a little bit about that and like each partner's role in that situation of how do we, one, like it's not really the mom's job to caretake what your dysregulation looks like, and two, how do we keep some sanity in the home? Because if the response pattern is like the child is having a hard time, the mom's trying to sort of quote unquote keep the peace, and then the dad is getting really disruptive and loud and upset, just feels like it's this reoccurring pattern in a lot of homes that, I certainly know.
Yeah, that's the number one challenge that I face like daily as you do of that's the thing. So I've got this strong-willed child who doesn't always like take the dinner table, isn't eating correctly, sitting the right way, and then dad's tone, hey Jake, you need to sit up straight. And then the wife starts to go into, if my son doesn't stop this, that loud voice is going to get louder, and then my husband's going to start yelling at my son. And so I put my wife in this situation she had to kind of choose, like, and it's hard because, well, if I speak up to my husband, am I undermining his authority? And I can tell you, I was this immature dad, and I deal with it daily of like, oh, what? I can't say anything. I guess I don't do anything right. And then we become kind of big babies. And what I tell men, because I am a little bit more direct because I'm older, is your wife will lose respect for you because she's walking around. That's why back in the day, like when people used to travel and men traveled a lot for work, women were like, oh, thank God, business trip, right? Like seriously, it's like, and it's a joke, but it's not. It was real. It was like,
right.
Okay. And it's not always the dad's fault, but in my experience, it usually is, right? We're just more reactive. And so it will ruin the entire family dynamic. I put caveats on this. I prefer that women, if they feel safe doing it, talk more directly and succinctly to their husbands. Because I always say it, talk to men like men talk to men. When I talk with my guy friends, when I talk to Casey, he's a grown man, we're like 3 words. Hey, don't be a you know what. Right? And that resonates with us. Honey, we really need to talk about this. I'm out. But sometimes if you can, and again, if you feel safe, because it's intimidating for a woman of like, wait, I've got a husband with anger issues and you want me to go talk to him about his anger issues. I might do this as the mom. I might say, hey, I've noticed sometimes I talk too sweetly to our son and it seems like I'm too accommodating. So I'm going to start working on that. And husband, you are too reactive sometimes and it just blows up. So can you work on that? That way it's all, you know what, you're the problem here in the home and you're both working on it, because there's no other way around it other than the man in that situation has to learn how to control his own emotions. Otherwise, wife will lose respect for him, kids lose respect for him, and then dad becomes isolated over here. And then eventually just divorce happens. It doesn't work. So I did once a podcast, 10 ways to get your husband on board. Moms like work on everything. But dads are tricky because we get so defensive over things. And so I'm afraid that's not a great answer, but I don't want to put women in the situation of like, wait, now I'm responsible for mothering my husband. But you're caught in this situation of like, well, if you don't speak up, you're allowing your child to be, his whole self-concept to be ruined by the man you married. but he's got anger issues. So it's tricky, right? So
Yeah, no, but I love that advice. And I love the idea that, we fall into these roles very easily, right? So it's like you said, like the mother maybe is so sort of committed to wanting to improve and help the child that we are maybe more available when advice comes in of like, hey, maybe do this or try this. And we're like, okay. And we don't see it as a correction or an undermining. But a lot of times men, like you said, can get very defensive. And I'm very fortunate, a lot of the couples I work with, and I think in part it's because they're coming to me for help. So there's already an openness, right? They're already saying like, I yell too much or I do this too much. And so there is sort of the reaching the hand out saying, help me. But in situations where maybe that person's not there, I always say first, like to your point, like work on connecting, not correcting, right? So the minute we feel like we're being corrected, there's just a natural defensiveness that comes up. But to your point, when you were saying, I'll work on adjusting the soft tone all the time and wanting to always accommodate.
can I throw something in? Because I just remembered and I felt bad because I wasn't super clear on that. I like this one from men. Hey, hubby, for the next 3 days, could we just try this? Because now it's a defined period of time. It's not like you need to change your entire parenting style. When you come home and come into the house, and I would even sometimes you can break it down like an engineer. Hey, I've noticed here's the pattern. You come into the house, there's Legos on the floor, and you start yelling, kids vanish, we fight. So for the next 3 days, when you come in, could you just sit on the floor and connect with Johnny and just see what happens when you do? Because you know what I know about your son? He really wants to connect with you. You're his hero. And so sometimes that appeals to us as men. I used to do kind of a joke at live events of like, what moms who would stay home would be like texting, like, you need to get home, kids are out of control. And all the man hears is, oh, you want me to come home and yell at the kids? And so then it was like, hey, when you get home, can you get the kids outside for 7 minutes? And then dad's like, okay, I'll come home, grab some change out of my car, open the front door and say, treasure hunt, and throw some coins. I will say this, a lot of us as men, we don't have the dad gene. We don't naturally, most moms just kind of naturally do this. And they read the parenting books. Men sometimes, we're really good at competing, but that's not good for relationships. And we're really good in the work world. So to give a suggestion of like, hey, I've got an idea, maybe for the moms listening, set your husband up for success. Hey, hubby, when you come home today, grab some loose change or some snacks, throw them in the backyard, do a treasure hunt, get the kids outside, and then go connect with them. Now it's like, as a guy, it's like, if you were to tell me, well, honey, when you come home, you need to connect emotionally with the children. And guys are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Oh, but you want me to do a treasure hunt in the backyard? Oh, yeah, I can do that. Like, play to guys' strengths. A lot of times we're good at doing and playing. And I'll add this one. Just don't always correct us if we don't do it exactly the right way. Because when I take the kids outside, I'm probably going to roughhouse with them because that's how men connect with kids a lot of times. And then we're almost like puppy dogs, right? Like, hubby, hey, you know what was really cool? When you came home and you sat on the floor and told our son that his Lego project was really cool. Oh man, I saw his eyes light up because he craves your affirmation. And then the dad starts to learn, I sit on the floor, I do treasure hunts. I can do that. Just don't ask me to read a parenting book and do your 10 step. I'm not right, and I'm not being funny. That's how we think.
No, it's true, though. I think a lot of parents are like, I don't even want a book. Just tell me what to do. Like, there is a lot of that sort of, I think it's a stressed time to be a parent, right? You have a lot of two working parents and there's a lot happening in people's homes. But I can appreciate exactly what you're saying, because I think sometimes we can stay so stuck in our resentment of like, you need to be like this and the other person thinks they need to be like that. And I've done a video on this before, or maybe it was even a podcast, where I said what tends to happen in relationships is that, parent A might believe about parent B that they're too cold, too strict, too unavailable for the child. So to balance things out, parent A is going to compensate for those deficiencies and they're going to overgive. They're going to overly accommodate. They're going to be overly soft because someone has to, because the other one's not doing it. And then parent B, because of this, looks at parent A and says, well, someone's got to be the tough guy because I'm looking over here and this one's like lollipops and rainbows all over the place and there's never any kind of, And so then they double down on the what they're doing, which isn't what the child, in both instances, it's not what the child needs, right? But all we're doing is we're giving a lot of real estate to what we believe our partner is deficient in, and we're compensating for those things rather than just, I always say, like, when parents come to me, I'll say, I'm not a marriage counselor at all, and I'm sure there are fantastic ones out there. But if you need help, an objective source to tell you what is in the best interest of your child in that moment, that I can help you with. So I think when we can just remind ourselves that, like, maybe it's not even about me and maybe it's not about you. Here's what our kid's doing and here's how they're presenting. So let's come up with some solutions that just feel like they hit that nail on the head rather than you and I trying to fix each other. Like you're saying, right? Hey, when you come home, I love the treasure hunt idea. How fun, right? I used to always tell my kids because I hated being cold and it gets very cold in Michigan in the winter and they would never, kids don't feel cold somehow. And so they would want to play outside and I'd be like, your dad's going to be here soon, guys. He's the one that takes you outside and sits in the cold with you. And we did that setup a lot. He would just come right in, not take his shoes off. They would be waiting in their snowsuits and they would just run right out with him. And so, right, you would just have this like good 20 minutes of like exerting all this energy, playing, running, like you said, roughhousing. There is a lot of research that supports wrestling and roughhousing with kids. I know it feels like some parents might not feel comfortable with that, but I remember when I was a teacher, I attended the seminar with Bev Bose, she's now passed away, but she was really, really good at like helping people understand a play-based environment and the importance of play for kids and open-ended learning and just not really giving problems, but letting them become problem solvers. I'm sorry, giving solutions instead of like letting them just solve it on their own. And she shared a lot of research one time in a seminar about how good it is for the brain when we let kids wrestle. Like it feels funny to be like, all right, kids, start to wrestle. But like if they're engaging in a little bit of that physical play, just recognize there is a need there. I mean, even from a physiological standpoint.
Can I share something as a dad? So dads feel shut out of parenting in two ways. One is really sweet tone, because we're not going to do it. And so we're like, well, I can't do the authoritarian and I can't do this really sweet. And so that's where you and I have it. No, there's a middle ground. You do this even matter of fact. And then that roughhousing part.
Yeah.
Men, that's how I connected with Casey when he was little. We played games on our hands and knees. Well, he was standing, but he was little. And I would tackle him over and over. And he would he's like, Daddy, tackle me. Like, here's an analogy. If you see a parent throwing a baby up in the air, it's never a mother, right? It's always going to be a dad. And so sometimes men will be, and I'm not talking about being abusive or you need to learn how to be tough. I'm talking about good roughhousing. Sometimes moms will come, oh, honey, don't play so rough with him. And the child's giggling. And so that's where sometimes men are like, you know what? I can't do anything right. So I'm out. And so that whole idea of giving a man like your husband taking the kids out in the snowsuits was real. I remember being a young dad. You know, when your kids just do those monotonous things like, Daddy, watch me move this car across the living room 84 times in a row and sing the same stupid freaking song. Like that was hard for me. But what I was good at was doing physical stuff with my son. And so if you are a mom out there and your husband has trouble connecting, realize we often connect by doing things with our kids, riding bikes. Give him permission to go out in the woods and get dirty and build things. Like Casey and I, we're older. We hike a lot. We like being dirty. We like doing slightly risky things. That's what we do. And that's our connection. It's stuff that my wife and his mom, she would never do. And so I'm hoping there's something in there that you can use with your husband, because just having a long talk probably won't work. But it's like, hey, honey, you know what I noticed? When you took Sarah out and you did X in the backyard with her, man, I could just see her. You know, a good one to say is, hey, when I put Sarah to bed tonight, all she kept talking about was how much fun she had with Daddy. Because as a dad, I'm like, okay, I can do that. And now you're creating successes for your husband.
Yeah.
And he's like, now I'm getting some confidence here. and how to connect. It's a really big deal because we often feel kind of helpless as dads, like we don't know how to navigate this. Because a lot of us had dads who just hit us. Oh, can I add one more?
Sure.
Because I'm kind of thinking as we're talking, I think I might do that with a husband who struggles, who's not an abusive dad, but he just can't control himself. It might be, you know what? I know your dad. You've come a long way. You're not your dad. And inside that would resonate with me. And I'd be like, because sometimes we're like, honey, did you know my dad? Like, I know I'm not talking all touchy feely like you, and I don't read all the books, but my dad didn't even connect. My dad hit us. At least I'm not hitting the kids. And I know that's kind of an immature way for us to do it. But sometimes acknowledging for your husband, you know what? I see where you've come from. You're doing a really good job. See, now I want to work harder as a dad because instead of it being like this unrealistic standard of being like perfect dad, Ward Cleaver, who walks in the room, it's like, no, you're actually doing a really good job with the kids. I always ask couples, I'm like, ask your spouse, what is one thing I could begin doing differently? And then you both do that. So for one of you, it's going to be stop talking so sweetly all the time. And the other one is stop being too reactive. And then you don't have to parent exactly the same way. I was always tougher. I was like, hey, Case, I know you're not feeling well. Yeah, we're going to work anyway. Too bad. And my wife is like, but I think he really needs some rest. And I was like, I know some days he does, but today I've got a busy day. I need his help. And you need that balance together.
Yeah.
So sorry for rambling on about that, but I really want dads to be engaged.
Yeah, it's an important point. And I think, there's two things that you said there that I was thinking about as you were describing those situations. One is the value and the importance of noticing. And noticing is just a great skill for us to do, not just with our partners and our kids, but just with ourselves. Like, notice the things that work, notice the things that feel good. And when somebody says to you, hey, that was pretty cool watching that, or that, man, hearing you guys giggle in the other room, that gave me enough joy for a lifetime. Like, that felt so good to hear that, right? And so I think even with my husband and I, when we've been able to do that for each other, where we just kind of chime in and go, that was pretty cool how you explained that to him, or I love how you connected with him there, that I could see in his eyes the way he loved that game. Or I think when somebody else brings it to light, there's so much value in that idea of just noticing. So I think make that a practice that we're just going to take some time to notice and not because especially if you have a strong-willed child, it is so easy to stay focused on what's not working. So focused on like the things that feel problematic every day. But when you can just pull that camera lens out a little bit and zoom that out and go like, but look at that awesome moment. And wasn't that cool when this happened? And so I think that's one for sure that I thought of. And then the other one too is just meeting people where they're at. So whether that's your partner, and again, we're obviously not talking about situations where there is abuse or anything like that, but just in terms of like partnership and with your kids, meeting our kids where they're at is really important. One of the biggest questions I always get is like, but shouldn't they should know better, right? Like they should have learned this by now. And I always say like, I can answer that for you, right? Like I have the expertise to say developmentally speaking by this age and this age, yes, they should. It doesn't matter. When you subscribe to that thinking, you're going to always assume their behavior feels deliberate, purposeful, intentional, and you're going to take it personally. Or instead, whether they should have learned it or not doesn't matter. They're doing it. So now you have a choice to decide how you want to address it instead of going at it from this personal stance of like, you clearly know better and you're still choosing to do it. So I think meeting people where they're at, whether that's our kids or our partners, is a really important practice. And it's how we build, it's how we grow, but you have to be willing to do that. And people meeting us where we're at is just as important.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I could keep you on for another 5 hours.
If people like it, we'll do it again sometime.
We definitely should. I know people are going to really find so much value in your words and your ideas and the way that you reframe things, which is why I created this podcast, the Parenting Reframe, because I wanted to take these simple ideas that where we get stuck and just really let's reframe that, because I think we're not looking at it in the same way that maybe I would look at it or somebody else would. And I think when we offer ourselves ways to reframe things, then new solutions come to light. We learn a little bit more about ourselves. We start to connect in ways that maybe we didn't think were available before. And so I think your work speaks to that so much. And I'm so grateful for you and everything you do. And especially for fathers, I think this is an undervalued situation where we're just there aren't enough resources out there where dads can really feel seen and they can feel connected. So I appreciate that you shared your story and that you continue to do so, and that Casey's okay with it too. I think for our kids, I'm always kind of towing the line of like, do you guys care if I share this one, or do you guys and they're their own adults. But I think the fact that you can both, talk about it and share that piece of your story is giving so much light to others. So Kirk, where can people find you? Where can people connect with you? Because I know they're going to listen to this and go, where is he? By the way, I was telling you this on the beginning, but all of your videos on Instagram and TikTok are in the most stunning locations, to the point where my husband was like, is it real? I was like, I think it's real. I think it's a real background. So where can people connect with you and get to know more about your incredible work?
So just look up the Calm Parenting Podcast. We're kind of everywhere. The website is celebratecalm.com. And then Instagram and TikTok are Calm Parenting Podcast. I'm more active on Instagram, so I'm there a lot. I interact with parents. I like it because you get that immediate feedback. And then the stunning, weird, lucky we live out in the Tetons. We just got a big snow last night. So I get to do these, I get to combine, I get to do some teaching and education while I'm staying in shape hiking. So it works out. I'm super lucky to do that. But thank you. This is awesome. I want to talk to you again because I probably have more questions for you.
Oh my goodness. Yes. I want you to come back on. I've had so many people who have just been repeat guests because I think so much of the work that you do and others that I've had on the podcast, it speaks to this, subset of kids and families that are struggling. And I think we have to bring some light to it and say, one, you're not alone. Two, you're going to be okay. I always tell my parents, I promise this will be in your rearview mirror one day and you're going to go, oh my gosh, we made it. We did it. We got through it. And you're going to learn a lot about yourself. I've said this and I stand by it till the day I die, but I have learned the most about myself from not just my own kids, but the thousands of kids that I've worked with. And that really is also speaking to the kids who are strong-willed. Everything I learned in graduate school, I think just got thrown out the window because it didn't matter. They played by a whole other playbook and they were like, oh, we don't care about that. And so I had two choices at that point. I could stick to my guns and say, nope, this is the way I'm supposed to do it, and da-da-da-da-da, and I'm going to be this, and I'm going to do that. And if they can't, then I'm going to blame the parents, and I'm going to tell the parents I can't. I could have gone that route, but instead I said, I'm going to figure out how to connect with these kids. I'm going to surrender to this entire process, and I'm going to learn everything I need to learn because it is on me to help them get better, to thrive, to learn, to create environments for them so they can be successful in other places in their lives. And so it taught me so much about the idea of just letting go of what you think you're supposed to do and really attune to what needs to happen. And that's a really beautiful life lesson too, really.
I can tell you, as a dad of a grown, strong-willed child, you can connect so well with these kids. That intensity, they bring the intensity to the connection.
Yes.
And looking back, I hope our son has strong-willed kids and that's it. Partially to get back at him. But no, I hope, no, but it's so cool. So one thing I notice is if you're a mom listening, so twice a month on our podcast, I do this quick tips for dads. It's a 7-minute podcast because men are well, I'm busy. I'm like, you can listen for 7 minutes, dude. And I give them one thing to stop doing, one thing to start doing. And that's really resonating a lot because men are kind of hey, tell me what to do. Tell me what to stop doing. I'll work on that. And we're seeing a lot of good progress with men that way. So
amazing. Well, we're going to link all of this in the show notes. I know they'll come over and find their way to your work because it really resonates. And I know it speaks to so many of the concerns that families I work with have. So
thank you.
Thank you again, Kirk. Well, this isn't goodbye. It's just we'll do a part 2 and you'll get to come back.
Yes, I can't wait. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever it is that you're listening right now. And what really makes my day is if you share or recommend the podcast to a friend. It is the greatest compliment. If you have not already, head on over to theparentingreframe.com where you can subscribe to get my weekly newsletter, Parenting Skimmed. 10 sentences delivered to your inbox every Thursday to help you parent and live a better life. It's for the parent who constantly told me, I just don't have time to read. Make sure to come and say hi to me on Instagram at theparentingreframe. My DMs are always open and I love hearing from you. Until next time, this is Albiona.